Okay, so this build video was originally supposed to be for a switchblade, but as you can tell by the name of the video, the test that I haven't actually done because this project isn't finished, but always put at the beginning, and the fact that I said was and not is, that it didn't really go according to plan. I'm still planning on doing it eventually. I still want to, I think it'd be fun. But yeah, I just don't think my skill level and tools are quite where it needs to be to make that the way I want at the moment. I could probably get it done, but it just wouldn't work the way I want. It'd just be, it would probably function, but not very well. So I figured best to do it right and do something else while I, kind of build a little bit of skills and maybe have a little better plan. So I ended up deciding to make this project, which I found while thumbing around for stuff online. It's labeled as just a Mk1 combat knife, old World War II. I couldn't find much on them besides the fact that the Kabar knife company makes them and a few antiques being sold. That's about all I could find, unfortunately, and a few dimensions of them. But as far as I can tell, they were basically a precursor to the more well-known Kabar combat knife that is used from like World War II up until, I think they're still being used actually, not certain, but they're still really popular. They're a little bit different blade shape, but similar leather handle, which is kind of why I'm doing this, because I want to do that. And I'm planning on making an actual like Kabar combat knife, well, styled off of. I'll still be using spring steel, which is what this will be made out of, just because it's my preferred steel instead of the 1095 that the originals were made of. But with a knife that is that well known, I kind of want to know a little more what I'm doing, at least as far as for the handle goes, to make sure I get that right. As with this one, it's, again, I couldn't find hardly anything on it. Basically, in the Wikipedia, it jumps from the trench knife that everyone knows, the brass knuckles, which weren't that common as far as I know, to the modern K-bar. So this one's not really known. But it kind of looks like a cool blade and kind of simple, but still very, old school military, which is what I like. So I thought, hey, I'm not doing anything, might as well. And yeah, this is going to be the result. And I just spent like 2 minutes talking, and usually it's not near that long. Anyway, I'm going to get started on the build. So now that I have the blade rough forged out, the tang's a little longer than I'm going to need it, but I'll have to trim it down. It's still, again, a bit thick, but I can fix it out with the grinder. So now what I'm going to do is basically grind it to shape and then grind the flats up, of course, because I want it to actually be smooth and not rough forged out, because this is supposed to be a professional knife and not a apocalyptic one or crude one. Although I guess combat knives could be a little crude sometimes, but not this type. They're generally well made. Okay, so now that I have my blade mostly finished, in the order I do this, you've actually seen the heat treating and temper of this, but I haven't actually done that yet. But I like to put that in before I, I like to do all the blades at once. Anyway, not important. But for my guard, this is just a piece of flat bar. Size is 2" by 1" by 3/16. I've looked at a lot of the historical pictures of these knives and the one kabar makes, which is actually kind of a cool knife. I also where I got the idea for this. Anyway, not important. But they're a lot thinner, probably more of an 1/8. But I think just thin guards looks really dumb. Personally, I think they're probably done that way historically because it would have been cheaper. And anyone who knows about military equipment is best quality made by the cheapest contractor. So, yeah. That's why civilians sometimes have better stuff. That's actually not important. Our U.S. military does have some good stuff from what I've seen. But anyway, when you're making a bunch of these, you probably don't make these the thickest. But I like them a little thicker, just personal. But what I am going to do is I have these 3 holes. I just tapped them in. I'm going to take a 1/4" drill and drill these out. And it's mostly the length of this part here. And I'll file it so that way it sits perfectly in there and actually hides the tang completely. And then we kind of round out the edges. I like to cut the slot in first though, so that way if it goes to one side or not, which it often does, I can sand that out in the, well, sanding. And then I'm going to go dunk it in ferric chloride to make it a little, etched, I guess. And then I was going to do this with the blade, but after sanding, it's like I really like the way it looks just sanded, so I'm not going to etch this one like I did the last set. Okay, so once you have this tempered and cleaned up again, took a lot longer than I wanted to, but when doing it by hand, that's a lot harder. I still have a little more sanding left to do, but I probably won't go much beyond a 200 grit, or 220, I think that's what it goes to. because I don't want it to be a mirror polish. I kind of like this kind of duller but still shiny look. The guard and pommel will be etched. And for the pommel, I have a bolt here. I was originally gonna leave it as a bolt, but I think I'm gonna shape it a little bit, or you know, maybe not. I actually kind of like the look of the bolt. Yeah, I think I'm actually gonna leave it as a bolt. But what I am gonna do now, I guess, is clean this up a little bit, and then I'll, of course, have the stacked leather, which is gonna be my handle. First time ever doing it, so hopefully that goes well. So I do apologize for my lack of filming on the handle, but it's all pretty generic, really, except for the actual handle part itself. I'm doing something different with this, and instead of wood scales, like I almost always do, this is the several stacks of leather. I do believe it's like 35 or something, at least on this knife. This is the way a lot of the original K-bars are. The knife I base on is like this. I've also seen a lot of miscellaneous like hatchets and stuff this way as well. Personally, I think the K-bars are really the ones that make it look cool. Most other things I think just kind of look weird, but that's just a personal preference. Anyway, so I hand cut all of these, and that was time consuming. Basically, I just cut them square or close to. The only ones I really made sure were shaped are the ones that the guard sits and the one where my pommel rests against. So that way I don't have to mess it much when I'm sanding, because I already etched those and I don't want to, you know, mess them too much. But what I found the best strategy for cutting them is, I was going to drill them and do all that stuff, but easiest way from what I found is just cut out your square and just take a box cutter and just press in. Don't do that, these things are sharp, like push it with your hand. Make sure you're doing it safely, of course. And then just cut a square, stick it on the end and just kind of hammer it down. It seems to work pretty well and is about the easiest. Oh yeah, I decided to see what happens when you take a blowtorch to leather. It smells pretty good, actually. I don't know if I should be concerned. Anyway, back on subject. What I'm gonna do now is I'll probably take off the last few layers, separate these just a bit, and then take some JB Weld and put it in the middle of the seams just to hold everything together. I'll probably film a little bit of it. Filming all of it would probably take, you know, an hour. But I'm gonna do that. Film all of those, then take my pommel piece, put it on like usual, and then hammer out the end here like it would most knives. I've seen people thread them, but from what I've seen, having it hammered out is the best way to go. And these seem to be held tight enough together on their own that I don't think it's really going to come undone if just there's pressure here. So hopefully this works out well, because this is a lot of work if it doesn't. Okay, now that all the stacks are nicely glued together and my fingernails are beautifully painted, I'm going to start shaping this to where it's not, you know, a giant blob. Although I've actually had worse handles. Don't buy Walmart stuff. But what I'm going to start by doing is just taking my box cutter, kind of shaving down some of the, you know, lower parts here to save myself some work. Then I'll probably take Farrier's rasp that seemed to sand some. Hopefully the epoxy stuff stiffened up everything so it'll actually, in theory, sand a little better. And then finish it off with a belt sander and then maybe smooth out with hand sanding. I don't know much about leather working. I'm still pretty new to this. But it seems like when you're having it in this configuration, leather almost acts like wood. So as long as I can stand the smell, it should work about the same, in theory. If not, I'll probably say what I did differently. But I'm going to start with the box cutter though, because I already did that to see if it would work, and it does. Okay, now that the leather handle has been sanded out, I give it some black stain. You can still see parts of the stain didn't go in where I tried to smooth it out a bit, and it really didn't work so well. I'm still kind of new, first time ever doing this. Although it does fit pretty comfortably in hand. Slightly small, but honestly it feels really comfortable. I don't know if I'd want to, stab it into something just from the way it fits, but honestly, I like the way it worked. Last thing I'm going to do before I really try anything is put a little bit of wax to seal this up. I got some beeswax from my dad that I'm going to try and melt a little bit and put on. Kind of help seal it and maybe smooth it out a bit, but other than that, I think it turned out really well, and I just need to make a leather sheath so I can carry it. Yeah.